Bernie Sanders has released a statement on the 2024 election that's pretty powerful. He got salty, kept it real. You can tell the man is sitting probably at home, very angry, reflecting on what's happened. And he released a statement that to me feels almost like lashing out at his home party, the party that he aligns with. This is what it looked like. Sanders' statement on the results of the 2024 presidential election. It should come as no great surprise that the Democratic Party, which has abandoned working class people, would find that the working class has abandoned them. First, it was the white working class, and now it is Latino and black workers as well. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right. Today, while the very rich are doing phenomenally well, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and we have more income and wealth inequality than ever before. Unbelievably, real inflation accounted for weekly wages for the average American worker are actually lower now than they were 50 years ago. And the statement goes on. Today, despite an explosion in technology and worker productivity, many young people will have a worse standard of living than their parents. And many of them worry that artificial intelligence and robotics will make a bad situation even worse. Today, despite spending far more per capita than any other country, we remain the only wealthy nation not to guarantee health care to all as a human right, and we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We alone among major countries cannot even guarantee paid family leave and medical leave. Today, despite strong opposition from a majority of Americans, we continue to spend billions funding the extremist Netanyahu government's all-out war against the Palestinian people, which has led to the horrific humanitarian disaster of mass malnutrition and the starvation of thousands of children. Will the big money interests and well-paid consultants who control the Democratic Party learn any real lessons from this disastrous campaign? Will they understand the pain and political alienation that tens of millions of Americans are experiencing? Do they have any idea as to how we can take on the increasingly powerful oligarchy, which has so much economic and political power? Probably not, he says. In the coming weeks and months, those of us concerned about grassroots democracy and economic justice need to have some serious political discussions. He ends with, stay tuned. So overall, I'm with that statement. I think the Democratic Party has sort of lost its connection to any sort of realistic left-wing policy that actually helps working people. And a lot of people, myself included, felt like Bernie Sanders in 2016 was the closest that we've gotten to a candidate that actually seems to care about any of that stuff. And he sort of had the energy and power, it seemed like, to galvanize progressive voters around his policy that he was putting forward. So I agree with this statement. I think it's a powerful statement. I think it's an honest statement in terms of how he must feel right now, having watched the results of the election. And that's partly why I have a little bit of an issue with the statement as well. I think that a lot of us, especially those of us who wanted Kamala Harris to win the election, or I'll even expand that and say people who wanted a different outcome for the election. A lot of us are trying to put together what happened. And one thing that sort of rubs me the wrong way is anyone at this point who seems very sure of what happened. I don't think that anybody can afford to be very certain of what happened. I think that we can look at numbers, we can look at exit polls, we can try to suss some things out, we can do some detective work, we can make some inferences. But I feel like anybody who knows what happened would have known what was going to happen going into it. I feel like the people who know what happened are largely those who voted for Biden before and didn't vote for Harris, or voted for Biden before and didn't vote for anybody, or voted for Biden before and voted for Trump. Those people understand what happened. I haven't talked to enough of those people to understand what happened. Since I've been making content and getting comments, I'm starting to get a little insight from some surprising corners of the internet in terms of what was going through those individuals' minds. But even that, even though those are the only people who could know, those people can only know for themselves. If we're talking about 15 million people who decided to go another way this time, no one's had the chance yet to do enough focus grouping, surveying, and figure out what those people had in common. It might have been 15 million different reasons. We really don't know. I think at this point, we're all speculating. So the idea that anybody is very certain about what happened rubs me the wrong way. I don't think anybody can know. I don't think the Trump campaign knows. Because if you look at the numbers they got slightly less than in 2020. They worked very hard and got slightly less. And what that means is, I don't think they understand at this point why so many people who had voted for Biden in 2020 didn't vote for Harris this time. I think that they would have expected, if they had gotten the same number as last time, that they would have lost. So no, I don't think they know either yet. I think in the coming days and weeks and months, they'll start to put together a picture, but I don't think they know either. I don't think anybody does. So my first issue with this statement is the certainty that Sanders is speaking with and making it sound like he had these answers. And that sort of leads into my second issue with it, honestly. Like I said before, I think anybody who knows what happened would have known what was going to happen the day before the election. If you know what happened, if you understand what happened, if you're very certain of what happened, then you have basically the same information now that you had before the election. You would have been able to theorize what was going to happen if you're so sure what happened now. And when I look at this statement, one thing that I think it leaves out personally is any sort of accountability or introspection on Senator Sanders' behalf himself. Senator Sanders has a hand in how the Democratic Party is positioned in 2024. He's not the face of it. There was a time when he could have been. That time was past. But the party realized that Bernie Sanders' policy does represent connection to some people out here in the world. Bernie Sanders' policy visions are powerful and popular and somewhat populist. So to some degree, they embraced him. He helped write the Build Back Better bill. When Biden decided to step back, there was a moment where a lot of people within the Democratic Party and progressive politics were wanting an open convention where we could have had any candidate, where the possibilities would have been completely open for anyone to step up, make a case to Democratic voters about why they should be the candidate. And Senator Sanders, among others, pushed for us to roll with Kamala Harris. Now, I think there's some practical reasons why he did that, but he did do that. He did have his thumb on that scale. You can look back at some of his tweets before Election Day. This election is one of the most consequential in the history of our country. I was proud to cast my vote today for Kamala Harris. I want to thank every Vermonter who has supported my candidacy for U.S. Senate. Let's go forward together. So he's campaigning for himself and Kamala Harris. And it's like, if you felt this way about where the party was headed, if you felt this way about the Democratic Party's lost connection to the values of working people, it didn't seem like he was pushing anything towards that in the run-up to the election. And I'm not sitting here saying that he should have been on the sidelines or in the wings criticizing her. It just seems to me that in the statement he's making now, he's not taking any accountability for helping to validate where the Democratic Party is now. Another tweet of his: "We know why Trump should not be president. Here's why Kamala should be. She wants to raise minimum wage to $15 an hour, cancel all medical debt, help working parents by expanding the child tax credit, expand Medicare to cover home health care, vision, and hearing." These policies sort of sound like what it is that he's pushing in his statement. So there's a little bit of a disconnect for me. Because on one hand, he sounds like he's upset with the party for not valuing the policies that would help working class people, but these were things that Kamala was running on. These things that he has highlighted, emphasized here, seem to be in alignment with what he wanted for the party. So I don't quite understand how he can be so disappointed in the party and yet have been highlighting things in the party that align with his vision. Do I understand the emotional state that he might be in now, considering that he did put all his chips in Kamala Harris? He did help as much as he could, and it failed, yes. And do I also agree that the Democratic Party needs to refocus? Absolutely, 100%. But I think for us to get where we're going, I think it's just going to take a lot of real introspection and real accountability. And so, whereas I like Bernie's statement in terms of where I think things should be going, I don't like the part that feels left out to me. And that's the part about taking some accountability. His thumb has been on the scale too. I bet that behind the scenes, he's pushed a lot harder. I bet that behind the scenes, conversations have not been rosy. But I think we need some insight into some of that too. Not just an angryish letter on the backside of a defeat. I don't know. What y'all think? I imagine my take might piss a few folks off. But to me, just understand it's coming from a place of where I've landed. And, you know, again, even for me, my introspection is like, oh man, I feel like I let liberal media trick me a lot in this election. I need to change where I get my information from. Like, that's my introspection. I feel like I haven't done enough work to understand why the message is landing on the other side. And I feel like I've let clickbait media sort of shape a narrative in my head that, oh, they're just crazy and they're just weird. And I do think they're crazy and weird, but I don't think that's the whole story. And I think I have to put in a lot of effort and do a lot more work to understand why so many people on the Democratic side decided to sit this one out. I need some different sources of information. But anyway, let me know what y'all think, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more soon. Like and subscribe, homie, friend. It's free. Stop playing.